interesting tidbit here. Apparently, Kirk Campbell said, or first of all, I can get to that next, but um, I've actually switched my opinion a little bit. I still think Alex Orji is going to end up being the starter for Michigan this year. However, and I've wondered this, but now I've pretty much, in my mind at least, confirmed he's going to get like a real shot. Davis Warren, I was a bit surprised by this, but apparently Kurt Campbell said Davis Warren's mechanics as a passer was better or is better than JJ McCarthy. So I don't know if that's him just, hyping up his guy, but and I don't know how much you know about Davis Warren, but he would have been a highly rated recruit, like a high 4-star recruit, if he wouldn't have had his battle with cancer in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that happened during his junior year, so he did have his senior year, but obviously with that going on, couldn't go to camps, all that kind of stuff. So I've kind of wondered this, but I'm curious if he could be Michigan's type of. Now, I'm not going to say, I don't want to be disrespectful, but just a guy that I'm thinking he could remind me of when I've watched him play in limited action. Maybe that type of Stetson Bennett-y. Obviously, he's not going to win 2 national championships. Stetson Bennett was an elite decision maker. But I don't know. What are your thoughts? It kind of, are you firmly in the camp of believing that Alex Orji is going to be the starter, or would it be very surprising to you if a senior like Davis Warren really rose up in fall camp?
All good questions here. So this is where I stand on this. So I watched the spring game, and I'm very much of the thought that based on the situation at most camps, that the spring game is simply our access to the team. It's not anything special in regards to giving us more information than the other scrimmages that are under lock and key that we don't get to see. So let's not, on one hand, let's not make anything more out of it than what it is. But on the other hand, it is our look into the football team. And so I was on Michigan podcast, and Steve Deace framed the quarterback question to me. And this was right after the spring game. And it just came out of my mouth. And it has proven to be my first point in all of this, is that based on the spring game, if these quarterbacks are as close as they appeared in the spring game, of course, we know that their skill sets are different, but close in regards to when you put it all together, that I think this is more about Michigan determining what kind of offense that they want to run versus who's the best quarterback. So if, let's say, Davis Warren, who is, from my understanding, I was listening to the Michigan show last night, and I've also picked this up from a few other sources, Davis Warren, a better athlete than maybe a number of people give him credit for. So maybe the athleticism gap isn't as large as we think it is, but we generally think Warren and Tuttle passers, Orji runner, that Michigan needs to decide, what do we want our offense to look like? Because based on the spring game, I don't think there is a clear-cut favorite. So what do they want to do with their offense? If they want to run a traditional Michigan offense that's heavy on running the ball and play action passing, of course, you get arguably the best tight end in college football, then I would lean Davis Warren. Yeah, arguably.
Who else is in that conversation?
I would say Brant Keith off the top of my head from Utah.
I've never even heard of the guy.
Are people's playing abilities predicated on who you know and don't know?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
All right. So anyway, so I think that's more about it than maybe the best player. Of course, you want the best player to be in the lineup. And then the other thought is, and this is an old line of thinking at this point, but I will state that I stated this before, at least I'm not saying I was the first one to state it, but I was the first one that I knew of. I'd never heard it from anyone else, that sometime mid to late last season, I thought, okay, Michigan 2024, are they going to look like Alabama 2023-24? Jalen Milroe. Is Alex Orji, can he be Jalen Milroe?
Oh, no. No.
Oh, he's not going to be that good?
No, I just think deep ball. I would find it hard to believe that Alex Orji would be nearly as accurate.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, because people think deep ball and they just think who's got the arm to get it there. And that's not the case. He has the arm to get it there, but there is a accuracy component.
Now,
And
the good news is if he surprises people and he is good at it and gets rapport with his wide receivers, you probably got to play. You can make the playoffs with a guy like that, because Alabama didn't have an elite wide receiver group last year, and they didn't have an elite tight end. They got it done. So, I mean, they had a lot more 4 and 5 stars, but just as far as the quarterback play, you can make the playoffs and compete, potentially win a championship with a quarterback who ain't that good or isn't that good at intermediate, consistent passing. So, I don't know. We'll see. It would just surprise me if he turned out to be that much of a threat throwing the ball down the field. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
if your team's as good as it's been the last few years, and especially last year, then you're right. But there are only a couple programs, and Ohio State may not even be one of them. It may just be Michigan, Alabama, Georgia that could get away with that.
Yeah, the main reason why I say that is because I actually think our defense, I don't know where this, I guess I haven't heard this narrative too much. I heard it a little bit right after the national championship game, but it seems like now people have had a time to pull their heads out of their butts and realize, like, okay, Michigan's actually going to be returning a really good defense. I'm not going to say it's going to be as good of a defense as last year, because that's a national championship level defense, but I think our defensive line is the top end. I think it's going to be better. Not going to be, they're not going to have as much depth, but they will have some depth. That's going to surprise some people. I actually think the other thing, though, that could benefit Alex Orji, I think our wide receiver, I don't know if you consider this a hot take, I think our wide receiver group is going to be better this year than it was last year. That's my gut feeling. I don't have a ton to go off of that, just a little bits and pieces I've seen here and there. And if you combine that with expecting guys to take the next step forward in their development, which there's no reason to think otherwise at this point, I think as a unit, they're going to be better. Mostly because I think they're going to be more balanced. But again, I could be wrong in that. And lastly, too, I've heard Steve's take, and I don't know if you've addressed this. I think he is way off on the quarterback situation. He seems to clearly think that Michigan, I don't want to say screwed up, but should have hit the portal to get a guy. And number one, it's like, well, who were they ever going to go get? There were 2 guys that I was in the camp of Michigan looking at. If they hit the portal, one of them would have been Miller Moss, and then the other one was who's Iowa State's quarterback? Rocco something.
Rocco Becht.
Yeah, those 2 guys I was interested in, and I was thinking, okay, there's a possibility, because I think at one point there were some rumors that those guys might hit the portal, but there's rumors with almost every quarterback might hit the portal, it seems like. But yeah, so that's my, I think it's definitely going to hinge on the quarterback. I do disagree with you a little bit on, it makes sense that you would believe it depends on what kind of offense Michigan is going to want to run. I don't think that's the coach's mindset. I think they're going to put the most complete quarterback on the field, whoever they think is the best. And I also don't think they're going to be, they'll run the ball a lot, but I think their concepts behind passing the ball, I think Kirk Campbell is going to be more willing to take 50-50 shots down the field with whoever's at quarterback. When he was offensive coordinator for, it was either 1 or 2 games earlier in the season last year, their passing game looked, at least in my opinion, quite a bit different, or noticeably different. So again, we'll see. I just found it really interesting that the offensive coordinator would come out and say, not just that Davis Warren has a stronger arm, which he also said that. Like, when those guys lined up and just threw for distance, apparently Davis Warren consistently was able to throw it farther than JJ. But I know some people would say he's just blowing smoke, but I don't think he's that type of guy. I don't know. When just hearing that situation, do you think he's just kind of trying to get the fan base excited, or do you think there's some legitimacy, like that he's actually seen evidence that a guy like Davis Warren has better mechanics than JJ? That doesn't mean he's better or a better prospect by any means, because he's not. But I don't know. Or do you just think he's blowing smoke?
I don't think he's blowing smoke. And this is the reason why, is that he can certainly talk about his players and build them up and try to make them look really good to the fan base, talking about players that haven't proven anything. But for him to take a legend in the program and to make that comparison, I think would be foolish. Plus, obviously, at some point, if Davis Warren wins the job, we're all going to see what kind of arm talent he has downfield. So I don't know why he would go to be that specific about it. You know, he could say all the right things about Davis Warren's development, how he's picking up the offense, how he makes the right reads and the right decisions, blah, blah, blah. And that his arm strength is good enough, or he can make all the throws we need him to make. He could phrase it that way. But for him to make that type of statement, I would think it's legitimate.